Welcome to Hard Knock Life, episode 203. I'm Keith Chow.
I'm Dominic Ma.
Hey y'all, I'm Jamal Michelle.
What's up, fellas? Shawn is taking a break this week. It's Lunar New Year, Valentine's Day, President's Day.
I believe he's taking a break to work, technically, so it's a good break. But
I mean, it's all the holidays wrapped into one. But
yeah.
Fortunately, I got my boys Jamal and Dominic joining us. How you guys doing?
Fantastic. Caught up on WandaVision, so I'm hyped. I am.
You know
hyped.
what? Shawn's not here, so Jamal and I can gang up on Dominic.
Works, whatever.
You know, I've said this for 3 episodes in a row now. I like this show. I like it a lot. I'm one of those toxic fans who thinks if you don't like it, you're just too impatient. You're not smart enough to understand WandaVision.
I think, like the Star Wars franchise, they should have started on episode 4. Wait, look, let me back up for a second. Like, I was under the misunderstanding it was just 6 episodes long because I can't read or I reverse numbers in my head or something. I guess it's actually 9 episodes long.
9.
But with that clarification, I think they should have started around episode 4 because I think the first 3 with the 50s and 60s sitcoms, I think could have been like Saturday Night Live sketch length, and I think they just went
too far.
Yeah, it was just too slow an intro. But of course, because of the binge watching model, we're used to like letting the first 2 or 3 episodes go now. So I mean, there's that too. But anyway, all this to say, I think they did a much like a more vivid parody of this Malcolm in the Middle with this most recent episode.
Well, you know, and I think that's an interesting point that you know, because I heard a lot of people honestly say that, like, especially with episode 4 being completely devoid of the sitcom parodies, right? Like, episode 4 was straight up the Monica Rambeau in the real world. Everyone said we should have just started here. And I understand that because it's like episodes 4 through 6 have been much more of the typical MCU variety, right? Where we get to see like what happened after the blip and Jimmy Woo and Darcy Lewis and Agents of S.W.O.R.D. and all that stuff. I still think that like that stuff in the middle works more because we spent the first 3 episodes inside the Twilight Zone.
It's funny that people talk about the being patient thing because for someone who really disliked the first episode, because I just don't like that sitcom vibe from that time, I felt I was sold by the end of the second episode. Like, there was just so much charm and appeal. And then, of course, you're thinking about the real world ramifications. Like, Vision is not, you know, he's gone. And this is like a very strange and just painful coping mechanism Wanda's established. And obviously it's a bigger, you know, picture. But episode 2 to 3, I'm like, I'm in it. I'm digging the cheese, you know, and I loved that magic show bit was so clever and cute, you know. So stuff is feeling like really cutesy, and so yeah. To your point, Keith, like when you get to episode 4, that's when I'm just like, oh, holy shit, okay,
right. Because I wonder if I would have been as invested had it, like, to Dominic's point, if we did the 9 episodes of WandaVision, like the Star Wars saga, and did 4, 5, 6. And then went back to 1, 2, 3. I don't know that I would have been as invested into like Jimmy's and Monica's story. Because I think the only reason I care about, not that I don't like Monica Rambeau. I mean, I'm very psyched that Monica Rambeau is on this show and that has such a prominent role. It's not that I don't like Darcy Lewis or Agent Woo. It's just that I don't think that the stuff that's going on outside the Hex is as interesting as what's going on inside the Hex, right? And the outside stuff only becomes interesting when Wanda emerges or when Vision tries to emerge from the Hex. So I'm very much invested in those 2 characters on the show.
After watching that one episode where, you know, you guys tore into the drone,
yeah,
I was like, okay, now I got it.
I'm the one with the problem with the drone.
I was really just like, what the hell? I had to pause and I'm Googling drones from the 80s and from the 70s. I'm like, wait, hold on a second. This doesn't even work. And then I'm thinking of Dom the whole time when her eyes turn red.
Her magic reaches inside the drone to create the Schindler's List effect? No, I still can't handle that. That's such an unnecessary mutant power among her billion mutant powers.
It really did. It
really
hit that way. I'm like, wait,
looks cool.
Weird.
I get it.
Oh, I do love the most recent episode that they did bring up the Kick-Ass illusion, which we talked about last week.
Was so good.
What was the Kick-Ass joke?
Oh, you missed it. So when
he literally says Kick-Ass.
Yeah. So like the twins are like running around, and like the one of them, I think it was Billy, or maybe it was Tommy. I don't remember which one, but one of them says
whichever one's fast.
The fast one.
Exactly.
Tommy's the fast one, right? Because he's the. Because I also love that they wear their comics accurate costumes, like everyone, even the twins, when they're like one's dressed as Wiccan, one's dressed as the.
Oh, Wiccan! Yes, thank you.
The What's the Young Avenger Quicksilver's name?
Oh, I thought he was just dressed as little Quicksilver.
Yeah, well, but they're also Young Avengers.
There's a younger version of Quicksilver.
Right. Well, the brother, the twins are actually like characters in the comics. Anyway, one of them says "kick ass," and she looks at Evan Peters, and then she goes, "Kick ass," and just it was just a great little Easter egg, especially since we talked about. I'd forgotten Evan Peters was in Kick Ass. We had talked about the fact that both Kick Ass characters or both Quicksilvers were the two leads of Kick Ass, or not leads, but whatever. Anyway,
along those lines, I like how they also lampshaded the accent issue for once. Just a quick thing of just like, what happened to your accent? What happened to yours? Just like. If we're familiar with that TV trope of lampshading, it's like when there's something ridiculous, just dispel the problem with it being ridiculous by calling attention to it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like saying, what is this accent problem? Well, obviously there is one, but we don't care that much.
I appreciate when they bring back costumes like that in that Easter egg fashion, but I don't know. It's just really charming. When Captain America is the first Avenger and he's got the classic Captain America outfit, that's one thing, but for them to like come downstairs and they're like in their Halloween costume as themselves, there's so much charm in this show, and I thought it was just like really, really cute and sweet. But then also Vision just being like, yeah, I got my own shit to do, so I'm gonna go.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm very curious how the last 3 episodes are gonna wrap up, but for those folks who want a more MCU ish kind of Disney Plus series. We didn't get to talk about this last week because we recorded before the Super Bowl happened, but during the Super Bowl they dropped the trailer for Falcon and Winter Soldier, which very much looks like Captain America 4, for lack of a better word. What did you guys think of that quick sneak peek at the next Disney Plus shows, which looks like it's going to come on right after WandaVision ends, so it's just like 12 weeks straight of Marvel.
Boom, right. Oh my god. I don't know if, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Falcon take over?
Well, that was what was implied at Endgame.
But then we have somebody who, and I paused, and I made sure I like paused freeze frame like frequently in that trailer, but there's a white dude wearing the Captain America suit, but I'm like, is that Cap? The person looked like shorter than Chris Evans, so that couldn't really just be like a flashback. Chris said he was done with that role, unless he was lying.
Well, speaking of lying, we'll talk about Marvel actors lying, right?
We'll talk about liars.
That's probably U.S. agents.
It is U.S. agents. I don't know if it's a spoiler, but like U.S. agent who was the Captain America like replacement in the comics. He's been confirmed to be in the series, and I think we know who's playing him. A guy named Wyatt Russell will be playing.
Wow.
him.
Okay.
In the comics, they come up with an off-brand Captain America when Captain America Prime is out of
when he's Nomad, right?
Yeah, when he's being Nomad. Thank you. And,
wow, that's cool. Okay,
so he will be mistaken for Captain America in the Dark Alley because he has a similar costume and sometimes has the shield. So it seems like they're shaping up the whole conflict as like both between Bucky and Falcon over like, well, who's running the shield, and really who's the alpha dude here, and also U.S. agent is somewhere in that mix.
Yeah, and I think I don't think it's spoiling anything, and this is more than speculation, but I think the storyline is going to revolve around, to Dom's point, Falcon and Winter Soldier kind of figuring out what is the legacy of Captain America, and then the U.S. government saying, well, we're going to make this guy
the face of the company.
But I think he's going to be positioned as like a right-wing version of Captain America. And all of this happening while Baron Zemo returns and puts on his purple ski mask for the first time. Speaking of comic accurate costumes. So we're going to get that too. So I think there's a lot of things that are kind of like packed together, but this definitely is much more in the vein of the Marvel movies than WandaVision was, and I think Loki will be, because Loki's also looks pretty like crazy as a TV show.
Can we talk about how amazing it is that they are reaching so deep into the canon, into just the universe on screen? I think it's so incredible. We've got 10 plus years in the making to get here, right? A TV show about Falcon and Winter Soldier, like that's That's
with
the title
US
of the
agents.
show. Right, like how did we get here and it be stable? Like it's so stable, it's so convincing.
That's the secret
Wow.
sauce. Like we say this all the time, that the fact that they made people care about the Guardians of the Galaxy, like comic fans didn't care about the Guardians of the Galaxy. And now you have like preschoolers who know who the fuck Rocket Raccoon is.
I know who Groot is, right? They got him on his lunch. They got him on their lunch
Like
box.
Dominic, you're
Wow.
a pretty hardcore Marvel fan growing up. Like, did you know who Gamora and Nebula
Oh
were?
no, I knew a different bunch of Guardians of the Galaxy, and
We're the ones who show up at the end of the second one, right? Like Michelle.
yeah, the
Yeoh,
crystal guy
Silver,
and
yeah.
The old
Charlie,
guys.
Charlie, what's his name? But yeah, no version of Guardians of the Galaxy were the A tier of the Marvel heroes. But like even more on the nose, just Captain America himself, as we said before, like Captain America is a hard character to sell. He's a little bit cheesy. He's a little bit Happy Meal. But he became like a very moving part of this movie universe.
Yeah.
And now they can go deep into all these Captain America characters. People like Flag Smasher. I'm interested how they're going to handle that, because supposedly an anarchist. Not in the comics, we don't really. He's sort of like against the concept of countries, which is interesting. But we'll see how they treat the idea of an anarchist philosophy, and also played by a young redheaded woman, not like a hulking guy.
So yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely that's the secret sauce that Marvel figured out, and part of it is by default, right? Because they had licensed out all of their big characters, like the X-Men were at Fox, Spider-Man was at Sony, the Fantastic Four was at Fox. They couldn't actually use their big guns the way Warner Brothers just had free reign to use Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. They had to focus on these second tier, third tier, fourth tier characters, and it's very similar to the CW, right? Like the CW couldn't use Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman, but they had to make it work with Green Arrow, the Flash, and the Atom, and Black Lightning, and using all of these like third, fourth tier characters, and built an entire fan base around those characters, right? That like now finally we get a Superman show based in that universe after that universe has been around for 10 years, and we're only just now getting to Superman on the CW, even though we did have 10 years of Smallville. Like it's not like Superman needs another TV show.
Wow, but that's such an awesome way to conceptualize how Marvel's had to approach appealing to now the cinematic viewer, that you can't use Spider-Man, but when you do, you've built so much of the world already that we are so hyped to see Spider-Man for like 10 minutes,
Right?
if that, in Civil War, which again, to me is number one or number two on the list of just Marvel movies, just because. But imagine if they could. Do you think it would be as like rich now if they did have their heavy hitters so early on, or would it just have been like shitty movies at the beginning? And kind of like what's going on with DC, you have free reign, but you're not doing anything with it.
And they could skip the Spider-Man origin story based on their third go-around in which they made the Marvel Universe without him. And that turned out to be a good thing. The way he's introduced in Civil War, I think, is so perfect.
Well, speaking of getting access to their other studio licensed out characters, one of the potential Easter eggs in WandaVision is she keeps referencing this aerospace engineer that she knows. And in the most recent episode, she and Jimmy were going to go find this person. And there's speculation on the internet that she's referring to Reed Richards. Do you think that's who she's talking about, or is that...
First of all, I was like, who the hell is she talking about? Where did this person come from? I thought I fell asleep. I was watching this, and she's just like, yeah, I gotta meet this so-and-so at the bridge. I'm like, who?
I mean, it might
Who
not be
gonna
Reed Richards, but they've definitely, they've already dipped into the Fox well with Pietro, so...
It's too soon.
I was telling Dom, I was watching this video where people, all the theories are already all over YouTube, but like Mephisto and Nightmare might be involved. You've got then like the Silver Surfer and Fantastic Four world is not too far then if you're going to introduce those characters. So I don't know. That sounds crazy. Reed Richards?
Could be. I mean, like I said, that's a lot of the speculation on the internet, and we know how internet rabbit holes can be for good or for bad.
I kind of wish there was a show of Darcy and Jimmy and Monica just watching the MCU. I mean, in a different world, like I like that POV of the show, because there is an aspect of WandaVision that is like, oh my god, white people. There's this it's sort of like watching, oh my god, the 50s idyllic family sitcom, and what you would do to preserve it. So it's kind of funny when they're just watching it. It gives you that.
There's an excellent point about that, because it made me think in this most recent episode, because, for the first 5 episodes, they went chronologically. The first episode was clearly the 50s. Dick Van Dyke, Father Knows Best kind of thing. The 60s was clearly Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie. The next one was the 70s, very much in the Brady Bunch, Partridge Family kind of world. The 80s was clearly an homage to Growing Pains and Family Ties. But then they skipped the 90s, because the parody of the most recent episode is like Malcolm in the Middle, which is early 2000s.
Oh, is it? I thought
yeah, Malcolm in the Middle. Well, like the references were still 90s, but like they were definitely referencing like the Malcolm in the Middle, because of like the way that the kids talk to the camera, and that like the opening credits was clearly Malcolm.
Right, the credits was very much that's it.
And it made me think like why they skipped the 90s, and I thought like, well, what were the popular family sitcoms of the 90s? And it was like, it was Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Family Matters,
Matters,
because there were black people now.
Exactly, Martin Lawrence, In Living Color. Oh my God!
Like you couldn't do the 90s. I mean, other than like Friends and Seinfeld,
well, I thought,
they weren't family sitcoms, though, right? Like the traditional family sitcoms that you're parodying. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was probably the top 90s family sitcom.
Right. What about Full House, though? Well, but then it would have been like two, you've
they
got...
kind of did the Full House with the 80s thing. But, to Dominic's point about like the sitcom portion being very much like this celebration of whiteness, it was like, because 90s family sitcoms were all about black families, and that's why they couldn't.
Right.
That's why they couldn't do a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, or they could have tried a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
That would have been so funny. Oh my really God.
They would have brought in Scarlett Johansson to reprise
the role of
Okay, Keith, you're right. It's specifically it's good that they did not do a Fresh Prince in Bel-Air WandaVision episode.
Holy God.
That specific thing would have been opposite of a good idea.
One last thing about, since you brought up Jimmy Woo, now there's rumors that they may be actually pitching a Jimmy Woo TV show. Would you be interested in I mean, I would rather, if they're going to do Jimmy Woo, they should be Agents of Atlas, and they just dump all the Asian superheroes into one show.
Yeah.
Would that be not so good? I don't know.
Well, I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy, stranger things have happened.
Get Greg Pak on that, though.
Yeah.
I feel like the more the merrier. If they could just continue to introduce, like I was saying, I'd place myself as a casual cinematic viewer. When this shit pops up on screen, I'm like, whoa, who is that? So I Google and go down the rabbit hole. But if I could get introduced to more of these characters, then I can appreciate more of their work in the world of the comic books. So, I mean, that would be dope as hell.
Since we're talking on the topic of Disney Plus, the other big thing I think we should talk about this week is Disney's other huge streaming show, The Mandalorian, had some casting changes this week. It turns out Cara Dune is not long for the world of The Mandalorian. Gina Carano dropped from the show, dropped from her talent agency, specifically for sending out a pretty crazy Instagram post about comparing conservatives to Jews in Nazi Germany, which is a wild comparison. But she's been making some suspect tweets for some time now. Why do you think Disney finally dropped the hammer on Cara Dune?
This was probably a crescendo, right? I mean, it probably reached its apex because the election just ended, and you have a lot more folks peddling the fallacious voter fraud story, and she was one of those peddlers. And it's problematic in so many regards because, like we said earlier, you're not being canceled or censored because you're conservative or you're a Republican. There are plenty of conservative Republicans who work within that space, but when you start to do the things that like clash with empirical evidence and with reality, then it's problematic and it's dangerous. It's what led to the insurrection, so like I saw a lot of folks who were coming up from the cancel culture needs to be canceled part of Twitter, that they're saying, you just want to censor people whose ideas and views don't fall in line with your agenda. Right. But our agenda is like Black Lives Matter, Asian Lives Matter, LGBTQ Lives Matter, like vaccine save lives, the earth is round. What?
Yeah, that's that liberal agenda of the truth, right?
Of equality, of like, yeah, you should not be poor. But I mean, it's a problem when, again, you are fueling a really dangerous group of folks who are willing to do shit about it.
Well, I'm glad you brought up cancel culture, because that's always the case, right? Like whenever something like this happens, it's this like cancel culture strikes again. But And there's a fine line between what is cancel culture and what is like accountability culture, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Cancel culture, I think, is a flawed term when we're talking about accountability, a movement for accountability. Now, at the same time, there is a line between that and the daily Twitter pile-on, which happens literally daily. You do have to have a filter on to observe that, like, every single day, Twitter promotes a pile-on on somebody.
Someone, right.
And some of them are significant, and some of them are not, I would say.
Right. And I think there's definitely some, like, sometimes dunking on someone, even if it's justified, is unnecessary. You don't always got to dunk on someone on Twitter just because you can. Because also, sometimes dunking on someone on Twitter just amplifies the person you're dunking on, too. One of the dangers of the whole Gina Carano thing is that, on the one hand, you don't got to worry about cancel culture ruining her career, because, in fact, she's probably going to have a whole new career being booked on Joe Rogan's podcast, like, 5 minutes ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's going to be on Tucker Carlson one night this week, I'm sure, talking about, like, how unfair it was for her to get canceled. So, like, it's kind of this reverse psychology of, like, once someone's been canceled, they become this huge star on Fox News all of us. Like, the Gina Carano show following Tucker Carlson is probably not far off.
That's another reason why the cancel culture is a silly term. And again, I'm just talking about the term because you are literally not canceling anyone. You're trying to bring accountability to someone. And if you think you're actually canceling somebody from your Twitter account, sorry, you're wrong. You have an inflated idea of what Twitter is.
Right, but like you mentioned, she's going to get work. She will get
not
work,
canceled,
and she will get
just
notoriety
due to accountability.
Right, but what kind of tier equality will it be? They'll make their own cinematic universe with their own Captain America and
the
their
U.S.
own,
agent.
You're a U.S. agent,
right? That's good. That's good. U.S. agent, like Washington football team.
Chris Pratt is not the most liberal guy in the world. At least smart enough to, like, not broadcast it, especially, like, not when he's promoting a movie. He's not going around.
But he got dunked on. He got dunked on at the end
of
of last year and this year. Like the argument of the Chris's, like which one stays,
right.
And it sucks that there are so many Chris's within the MCU, and you're the one that folks don't like the most. So you're gonna get dropped. You're gonna get dropped off, man. And you're Star-Lord. It's not like your hero, personality can save you. You're Star-Lord. So folks are like, yeah, I'll take Thor over Captain America and Thor over Star-Lord.
It's one thing that kind of ironic of the whole Gina Carano situation. I think, Jamal, you brought this up before we started recording, is that when The Mandalorian first came out in 2019 and she was cast, like, some of the same folks who are, like, celebrating her now, a lot of the right-wing trolls had a different reaction to her inclusion. What were you saying before we started recording?
I've seen these, like, really hilarious collages of all the YouTube, conservative right-wing folks who are just so upset that a woman, like, wow, they got a woman cast is stronger than the Mandalorian. And there's this term Mary Sue that they're using, which of course is just like a pejorative. It's offensive. And they were using that. So all up and down the outrage and the tears that a strong woman was going to be punching Mando around. And now, we see the same thumbnails, but it's like the trolls have won, the liberals have won, the cancel culture has won, even though SJWs have won, even though you didn't want her.
Notably, she's one of the only ones in the show without a mask, right?
Right. That's true. That is true. Interesting. But no, like, to your point, Jamal, like, conservatives didn't know she was conservative until recently, right? It's the things that she's been espousing, like, don't wear a mask, COVID is fake, Biden's not our president. All of that stuff is of a piece. And it's like, speaking of hypocrisy, the same people who are like, Republicans have always been about at-will employment, right? They're very much against, like, unionizing and employment protections. Are so upset that a mega billion-dollar corporation is like, this don't look good for our brand. Let's get rid of this person.
Yeah, and that gets back to, it's Hollywood. You can lose your job for any reason. It's not a meritocracy. It's so, public perception counts, and that's why, yes, there are consequences for when you tweet about random shit. But I mean, I just think, like, the best scenario in all this was Twitter ending Donald Trump's account. I mean, for me that was the best case of, like, action that produced a result. which is like these lies and this bullshit is too much. It took them way too long.
Sure.
They could have done this years ago and the country would have had a lot more peace of mind, but they just needed to shut down that stupid discourse, that stem cell of ridiculous bullshit.
Right.
And all this other, like, I'm not saying the problem went away, but that cloud of noise around the problem, never should have been there to begin with.
And there's a fundamental misunderstanding of what freedom of speech and the First Amendment means, right? Because, like, the same people who argue that, like, firing Gina Carano or suspending Trump's Twitter account is a violation of the First Amendment is also totally cool with the head of our U.S. government telling you to go and storm the Capitol. Like, he's just exercising his freedom of speech. No, he's the president. He's the leader of the government. He's the leader of one branch of the government telling people to overthrow another branch of the government. Like, it's not...
It was never about free speech,
free
it's never about the Constitution. It was never about the details of that, because they would understand. I mean, if it's insightful language, it's not free speech. Like, hateful speech is not... You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. What the hell is... Everyone's been saying something along those lines. So, from that group of, free speechers, First Amendment folk, there's been nothing but insightful language, and that's not free speech.
The First Amendment is just the government can't dictate your speech. Your job can dictate whatever the fuck they want you to say. You know what I mean? Like, if you work at McDonald's and you tell the customers, go fuck yourself, the manager is not going to, like, well, he's just exercising his freedom of speech. You know,
he's going to fire you. Exactly. He's going to fire you. Oh my gosh. Exactly.
And the other thing too is, like, she's not getting fired. Like, they wrote her out of season 3. Like, that happens on every show.
Really? Exactly.
One other thing that was apparent this week is that Gina Carano is not the only person getting quote unquote canceled in Hollywood. Joss Whedon more and more is coming out. Thanks to Ray Fisher. Ray Fisher's he's the Hannibal Buress of the Joss Whedon phenomenon, because, it's been a dirty little secret that Joss has been less than kind to people on his sets. But after Ray Fisher came out for his treatment on Justice League, more and more people have been coming out. Warner Brothers did a whole investigation. And now cast members from his biggest success, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, are coming out saying that they were involved in an abusive set while filming that show. So, like, Charisma Carpenter had a lengthy statement. Michelle Trachtenberg had a statement saying she couldn't be alone in a room with Joss Whedon when she was shooting. Sarah Michelle Gellar, of all people, came out supporting Charisma. I've never been the hugest Buffy or Whedon fan. I actually have a lot of problems with Joss Whedon's Firefly show, which we won't get into here. But I know, Dom, you've been a fan of Buffy. Jamal, I'm not sure where you are in the Whedon verse, but
no, I need to learn. I need to, like.
But you like the Avengers, right? You like the Avengers,
right? Exactly. I'm from the Marvel world, so the Marvel world's been really quiet. So I'm like, y'all, what's going on? Tell me about this guy.
Like, all these Buffy folk are coming out, but we've been talking about the Avengers. We've been talking about Marvel. No one out of, like, any of the Marvel shows or, like, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or the Marvel movies have said anything. And in fact, we keep talking about, when we talk about WandaVision, every time you finish an episode, it says, hey, why don't you watch Age of Ultron? And it's like, bad timing, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still working on the most righteous way to say this. I am a fan of Buffy, and I do believe that Joss Whedon was the only guy with the skill set to pull off that Avengers movie. As far as toxic work environments, all that stuff should come out, because stuff has got to change eventually. Whether it's, it's just got to change. It has been a truism that, yes, asshole behavior happens in all Hollywood movie sets. Mm-hmm. Just because it's a truism doesn't mean it has to be that way.
Right. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Like, especially, like, in a lot of old terror cinema, there's this idea that, like, you have to be an asshole to have your vision realized, right? Like, Quentin Tarantino is a notorious asshole, which another director I don't personally like. but part of it is that you get away with it because you put out such great art, right? And I think now, I mean, this is part of I think the Ray Fisher hashtag is, like, accountability over entertainment. Like, it doesn't matter if these things entertain you if what's producing them is, like, some toxic shit, right?
Yeah.
Yes, but at the same time, who's going to come out from, like, the MCU and be the first, domino to fall on that side? Because do you think folks are staying quiet because they might, like, they're afraid of jeopardizing something, or is there something we don't know that's happened, but it's been, like, nipped in the bud? I don't know.
Well, they're running a tight ship in the Marvel universe anyway.
That's what I mean.
And we don't know what we don't know.
I think Joss had a bit of a falling out with them too. Like, that's one of the reasons he didn't come back for Infinity War. And I think one of the reasons he went on to Justice League was that there was a break after Age of Ultron between Joss and the MCU, even though like he was still tangentially involved with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but as we've discussed numerous times on the podcast, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was never really embraced by the larger, Kevin Feige fiefdom inside Disney. So it's fascinating all around. I'm just glad Joss is getting his comeuppance because I've never been a fan. Anyway.
No, but I mean, it's kind of goes to the, when people show you who they are thing. I mean, if there's anything I think we can learn from these sort of reckonings, people are crying out with their art. I mean, like, and when people, like, for a long time, Joss Whedon had this sort of niche as a, up with the strong, spunky female hero genre in Buffy, beloved by many young women. Rightfully, because it's a great show of that period. Now we're looking at it through a different lens.
Yeah.
One could say it was a case of overcompensation of some feelings he hadn't worked out entirely. Anyway.
Well, I think that's part of the fall, too, right? Like, because he was positioned as this, like, proto-feminist male filmmaker, because he was actually, at the same time, like, taking advantage of this reputation as being a feminist, taking advantage of the women on his show, like, that hypocrisy, I think, is what shines an even brighter light on his character, right? Like, it's one thing if he was, just an asshole being an asshole. Like we said, there are a lot of assholes on set, but I can imagine if you're Charisma Carpenter and you're reading interviews praising Joss Whedon's feminism and you're like, he's treating me like shit because I'm a woman, it's hard to reconcile that,
Yeah, that makes it even weirder.
One guy who's having the opposite of Joss Whedon and Gina Carano's week in the world of entertainment is my guy Pedro Pascal, the real star of The Mandalorian, who's got like the best job because he only has to show up on set like once a year, take off the helmet and like cash the check. You know what I'm saying? Like
that's it. Gosh.
He's got the best job.
And reap all the benefits. You're just going to be everyone loves you. You're like, hey, I'm not even under the mask, but whatever.
So Pedro, first, he came out in loving support for his Trans Sisters magazine debut cover where she came out as a trans woman, which is, ironic that like his co-star is a notorious transphobe. He also got cast in the live action adaptation of The Last of Us, the video game. So he's expanding the Pedro Pascal dad cinematic universe in his fourth role in a row where he's playing like a genre film where he's playing like the tortured father who has to raise his only child. Bella Ramsey is Game of Thrones co-star, is playing Ellie, but she joins the ranks of Grogu. What's the kid in Wonder Woman?
Oh, that poor kid. That kid was a strange character. I mean, strange idea of a character. He's a fictional character.
I thought that
person
too.
himself was a strange character.
What a strange kid.
Sebastian, was that his name? And then, of course, he was in We Can Be Heroes, the Robert Rodriguez like side sequel to Sharkboy and Lava Girl, where he was playing a superhero dad. Like, it's Pedro Pascal is being typecast as a dad. How do we feel about that?
It works, right? Like, isn't it? I mean, if it's not like a caricature where it's one thing if Kenan Thompson had to dress up as a black woman in the early years of SNL because they wouldn't hire a black actress. That's one thing. But for this, which again is like an art form and you can lean into it. I mean, it works in the Twitter world, and social media loves him even more. If you play a dad, social media is just going to love you, and if you lean into that dad role, social media embraces you like their father. So
good point on the Dadverse. I mean, like, if you're going to be typecast as something as actor, be typecast as something that always gives you a very strong emotional point to work from. I mean, geez, as opposed to like, I'm the woman who wears red, or like, like for a while, like Robin Williams was very typecast as a guy who had always tragically lost his wife and was rebuilding from it. But you know what? That's extremely powerful. So you can base a lot of movies around it. So it's a kind of typecasting that I think should work in his favor.
I'm not a gamer. I think Jamal's the only one who's like a legit gamer in this podcast. But it seems that Hollywood is, they've yet to make a really successful like video game based movie. I think Pokemon Detective Pikachu might be the most successful like video game adaptation that they've made in terms of just box
They did
office.
Sonic and Pokemon, and they always hover around the same like Rotten Tomato scores. And I think that's because they go for the very like commercial like campy. But I think The Last of Us, and that's HBO,
Yeah, it's
right?
going to be an HBO show.
doing that. Oh, they're probably going to knock it out of the park. I think they'll really kill it because there's so much rich world building and character development to take. Not that Pikachu is not an amazing, or Ash, or they're not amazing character, developed.
But
characters,
why has it been that, like, video games, which are such a huge part of the entertainment industry now, like they outgross Hollywood movies by billions of dollars, yet they've been unable to really like take advantage of that when they make live action movies. Because like we said, whenever we have like a live action movie or TV show based on a video game, it tends to just not do well commercially, critically.
Yeah, Monster Hunter was just so terrible. Yeah. Resident Evil.
Yeah, the Resident Evil. I mean, there's like 7 of them, but like no one likes them. I don't know why they keep making them. But like,
I think it's because of the approach. Maybe like it might be that they're going for the if you made a God of War movie, would you be able to emulate Kratos' character and his struggle and his tragedy instead of just, yay, everyone, this is Kratos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, can I ask this? Maybe this will be a question that needs to be delved into in a deeper way later, but like, what are you looking for in the video game adaptation? There's something about in the comic book adaptations, you're looking for the person to move, to literally come off the 2D page and become a 3D person. The funny thing about video games is you're kind of going back from 3D back from a 3D narrative, not 3D, but a narrative you can control into a narrative you can't control. I think that's just what makes video game movies not work, is it's annoying. Like, why would you go see this story where you have to watch people do it? That's the thrill of video games. You're involved in the movie and you're kind of propelling it forward.
That is a real awesome point, yeah.
To that end, I don't know how a video game movie would work, or what the best idea would be.
It could be the game where the storyline is going to stay the same no matter what, right? So something like The Last of Us, something like God of War, those storylines stay the same. You cannot change the direction the character is going to go. So if you've played it through, you know what to expect from the film. But maybe there are changes to the story that depart from the game, and folks are like, what the hell? He didn't do this, or she didn't fight like this in the game. So what are you doing? I think it's probably like a difference in creative execution. I don't know, but what you said, Dom.
Because I would assume that's the appeal of a video game, right? It's the immersiveness of the environment. Like you're not only controlling the story, you're a part of the story, right? Whereas movies are very passive entertainment. Like the stories happen regardless of what you do. I mean, I know that like Netflix has experimented with like the Dark Mirror episode,
with Bandersnatch,
where you control but that's more just choose your own adventure. You're not really like making every decision along the way like you do in a video game. Mm-hmm. And again, I say this as someone who's very not versed in it. Like the only video games I played were like sports games, and like I played Madden and NBA 2K. That's all I played.
Yeah, because for a second you understand that feeling of you get to inhabit your favorite athlete,
right,
more closely than you ever could. I mean, as the person or like as reading about them, right. And for me, that's why I'm a casual gamer. I just play like the superhero and licensed games, but to get it's to inhabit being Spider-Man or Batman in a more fulsome way, momentarily, or for 6 hours in a row.
The Last of Us looks interesting, and I'm down for anything Pedro Pascal does, so I'm psyched for that. I think that's going to be dope on HBO. So we're going to wrap it there. I did want to talk about Zack Snyder's Justice League trailer, but this episode was actually recorded before they dropped the trailer, so we're going to talk about that next week, if you're wondering why we didn't mention anything about the Justice League trailer. But we'll get to that next week. In the meantime, fellas, what's nerd poppin'?
Tom Holland, you're a liar. I know you're listening to this to this podcast. I know you listen to it every time it drops. I know you're lying, but that's okay. We don't want you to get in trouble.
Can we get context?
I know what you're talking about, but some of our listeners might.
So Tom Holland went on the record to say that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield will not be making an appearance in the next Spider-Man film.
And you don't believe
him? Right? So I don't believe him. That's what's nerd popping for me, is that I see right through you, Tom. And
he doesn't know. He's probably just been shooting with the green screen and like a guy in a mocap suit for like months. He has no idea who's in the movie.
They're not going to tell him. So that's what's nerd popping for me, Tom Holland. I figured you out.
Dominic, what's nerd popping?
What's nerd popping? I think Cathy Ann's debut feature, is it called Dead Pigs, is going to finally make a way to viewability time. Like, it's on Mubi, which I get confused with Tubi, or is it on Tubi and it's not Mubi?
It's on Mubi, but I don't know what Mubi is.
Yeah, I got really mixed up with all these streaming services.
What is that?
For a second, yeah, what is that? I mean, at one point, all the indie films were reliably on Netflix or Sundance Channel. Now, whatever. But the whole point is it wasn't findable at all, and I think we're all curious about it because, as we've covered, we liked Birds of Prey, which she directed a lot, and her debut feature, which was set in China, had a sort of Gotham City Batman villain aesthetic about it based on the trailer, and so we're interested in that. Keith, what is nerd popping on your end?
So on my end, I as I mentioned, we're not going to be able to talk about the Justice League trailer until next week, but there was a trailer that dropped related to Justice League characters, not the DCEU Justice League, but the CW's version of the Justice League. And there's a new TV show called Superman and Lois that's dropping on February 23rd. They released their final trailer. And say what you will about Tyler Hoechlin's portrayal of Superman on Supergirl, I dig it. I think he's probably the most, not screen accurate in terms of like looks, but like character accurate Superman we've had in a while. Like he's this like genuine, Boy Scout. And the premise of Superman and Lois is that he and Lois are raising 2 teenage sons in Smallville. And I'm a huge fan of Smallville, so it's just nice to see a Superman show on the CW again after I guess like 10 years. It comes out February 23rd. If you haven't seen, check out the trailer. It looks unlike any of the other CW shows. It actually looks cinematic, and I think they shot it in anamorphic widescreen, which is very unique look for a show on the CW. So I haven't seen the first episode. I hear it's really good. It's a 2-hour premiere, so it's basically like a mini Superman movie on TV. So I'm totally psyched about that. Wow. It comes out February 23rd. So yeah, Superman and Lois is what's nerd popping for me. I get to revel in Smallville once again.
Aww.
I'll have to check that out.
So how can folks get in touch with you guys on the internet? We'll start with Dominic.
I'm Doma at DOMMAH on Twitter and Instagram.
That's where they can dogpile Dominic.
Anytime.
Jamal, Michelle, where can people find you?
I am at XPROSPERE on Twitter and JamalMichelle.com.
Find me on Twitter at TheRealChild, _real_child, and follow the Nerds Color at the Nerds Color. Go to hardknockmedia.com to find this and all the podcasts in the Hard Knock family. Subscribe and download Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Spotify, NPR One. Now you can subscribe to this podcast on YouTube.com, but also subscribe to our YouTube channel for Jamal's interviews. Just smash that subscribe button. Smash that subscribe button, as Dominic said last week. Support us on GoFundMe and Patreon. Email us, thenerdsofcolor@gmail.com. And until next time, see you around.
See you around.
With a different perspective. Watch it on your screen, hit play, so check this. This is the hard knock life, but not the chicken kind. More like the people.